Hello there. My name's Ian Watson. I'm labeled as UK, but don't worry about that. I am here as a neutral observer. And in fact, it is only due to coronavirus and the delays in my examinations that I am not already a Spanish citizen. My remit today is we're going to look at the future Mediterranean. And I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves with a correct pronunciation of their name, followed by two or three things that are of interest about themselves. So I'll start at random by asking Olivier, because he is next on the screen. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Olivier Paquet, and I'm a science fiction writer for 20 years, and from space opera to anticipation. So it's a large scope of science fiction.
Jolly good. I pass along to Francesco, the mystery person who is unknown to everybody taking part in this conference. Francesco, pronounce beautifully and explain your career.
Well, you see me quite a lot of times here, but here I am as a science fiction writer. I come from Italy and have been writing science fiction since maybe 15 years. I won a couple of Italian science fiction awards, Urania and another Italy award and other awards all over, Europe. But let's say that since 7 or 8 years, I started this project called Future Fiction, where I translate some of the best science fiction writers from the world, from around 10 languages and more than 20 countries. So here I am to share my experience.
Jolly good. I pass on to Seran from Turkey.
Hi everyone, I'm Seran Demiral from Turkey, Istanbul. I published two fantastic fiction novels when I was a teenager in 2005 and 2007. Then I graduated from architecture, which is not directly related to literature, as you may guess, but then as an architect, I was thinking about the relation between the city and children. Then I define myself as children's book author or children and young adults literature writer instead of science fiction writer, because I only published one novel, one science fiction novel in 2015. Its name is Hayat Üretim Merkezi, Life Production Center, we may call it. I can tell its plot later on, but it's cyberpunk, let's say. Then I was studying my PhD in childhood studies. I'm more interested in feminist science fiction, feminist literature, gender and childhood studies.
Very good. Maria Antònia, welcome. Can you pronounce your name more correctly? Yes. And tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Maria Antònia. I'm from Barcelona. I'm a historian and I write in Catalan and I publish some short stories in Catalan, Spanish, in Italian too. And I write about nature. I like to write about ecofiction and solar punk. And I don't have too much time to write, but I try to write a little bit. So that's all. And thank you very much for this organization.
Oh yes, thank you, Francesco, and the other workers. Now we are all here. Okay, I believe so. I'll just mention that I have been living in Spain for the last 10 years. So I'm not very UK really, except that probably I am a parody of a UK person, but I did manage, in collaboration with an Italian writer called Roberto Quaglia, a surrealist, ignored totally in Italy, to produce this, which is, I believe, the only full-length genre book written by two European authors with different mother tongues. And this, one of the stories in there won the British Science Fiction Association Award. And when Roberto reported this to Italy, the only reaction he got from his best friend and fellow author was, "Can this be true?" And then the news was totally ignored, except by one fan magazine. The idea of going outside was too enormous, so it did not exist, so it was not seen. Like the legendary experience of the Australian Aboriginals when the ships of Captain Cook arrived. According to myth, they could not see them because they were too big and they did not know what they were. This is nonsense, but never mind. Anyway, so I present this as a credential for being part of the Mediterranean. And also, due to coincidence, I happen to have the Italian writer that I have read the most of after Roberto is Francesco, because I read his Next Human Toxic Waste Dump novel in English, and then I read his wonderful Book of Blood in English as well. On the whole, I'm pretty ignorant of the science fictions of other European countries due to complete lack of time to read the science fiction in English as well. And I'm most taken by the fact that Saran is here, because I was not aware of science fiction in Turkey. So I wonder if we might start with, there are questions, you know, but because the organization asked for questions, but probably I will ignore them. I wanted to ask Seran something about science fiction in Turkey. Is there a fandom? Are there books published?
Actually, I prepared a presentation at first to tell the little history in science fiction and also utopian writing in Turkey. And in addition to Turkish Republic period, I wanted to mention the Ottoman Empire period of science fiction and utopian literature, let's say. It's quite strange because it's maybe not only about Turkey, about non-English speakers world, or let's say peripheral countries in the world, except UK and US. We have no courage, we are not encouraged enough to write science fiction because science belongs to somewhere central, not peripheral. That's why when I was browsing the websites on local writers' works for my speech, let's say, but it's like roundtable and it's quite much more fun, I think. That's why I'm not complaining, but I was expecting that I can read all my texts. And then, okay, let's see what's the questions.
What you do?
No, but it's okay for me. But I need to check my notes, of course, not to miss any information about my country's background. You know.
Excuse me, it is one page only. One page.
No, 4.
Right. Okay, you need
make a summary.
Yes, I can talk.
Should I?
During one paragraph, let's say.
Yeah. Look, I'll switch over to Olivier while you look at your text and reduce it from 4 pages in your mind to 1. Okay, is that fair? Okay, Olivier. Now, I did read a number of French science fiction books, such as Courval and Jury and Philippe Goy and Emmanuel Jouan, Joël Vintrebert, a long time ago, probably about 50 years ago. And just by the accidents of my life, I have not ended up in France, but rather in Spain. I would have read a lot more French science fiction. Serge Brusselot seemed very interesting to me, and I have a book by him, but I have not yet started to read it because the books pile high. And one thing that I remember most charming about France and science fiction was that after a convention, I went to the science fiction book club, not book club, lunch club in Paris. And
Déjeuner du lundi, Monday, Déjeuner du lundi, it was, yes. I participated, I was a member of this.
Were you there at the one?
Where? But not when you, but...
Oh, yes. There was a man sitting there who said nothing. He ate his meal and listened and smiled and said nothing at all. After people went away, when he went away, I said, who was that man? Nobody knew. He was somebody who discovered that there was something interesting to listen to while he ate his lunch, and had been coming for months and months and months without anybody asking who he is. Anyway, so surreal things can happen in France. The French group was going to bid for the World Science Fiction Convention to be held in Nice, and this bid has disappeared. Do you know anything about that? I went to a party in Dublin, so I talked to the organizers, and it has disappeared.
Yes, they dropped the bid because of the coronavirus. Because in Nice it would be difficult to build the Worldcon in Nice. There was a change in the tone about the palace to have the convention. So it was mostly practical and material difficulties, and moreover, it was not very well supported by French fandom. There was a discussion about it because it's Anglo-Saxon, so it was imperialism. it was seen as some kind of imperialism. So it was also not overwhelming love for this bit in the fandom. The fandom is the struggle in the fandom. So it's why it's difficult to have a Worldcon organized in France mostly. And we have different kind of convention in France. We have Utopia, we have Imaginal. So there's another way to have links between people, between readers and writers. So the American kind of convention is some sort of alliance kind of convention for France, and we have success with our convention. So it's also difficult to have a Worldcon in France because we don't have the same tradition.
Utopia, I've been to it. It is huge and magnificent. But will it be possible to hold it this year in another month? Do you think?
Yes, it will be all this year. With it would be changed because there will be only mostly French writers, because overseas writers is too difficult, and we have only 5,000 public audience. So it's another organization, but it will be free. The other years it was the entry. There was a fee for the entry, And this year, all the convention will be free because it's not the usual Utopian. So it will be more friendly for people who can assist.
Yeah, okay, right. I should turn, it's all right, Saran, you can continue shortening your novel to one chapter. Now, Maria Antònia, you are a Catalan writer, so books are translated into Catalan because there is support from the local government in Catalonia. But do you get translated out into Spanish very much? I cannot hear you. Silencio.
Now? Can you?
Yes.
Now? Yes?
Yes, wonderful.
Okay. Can you repeat the question?
Of course
please?
I can. I love the way we have a huge map of Africa behind you. This is beautifully irrelevant. No, it's wonderful. But there is Zanzibar and the Belgian Congo Belge. And Afrique Orientale Française. You should be proud, Olivier. There are no Spanish colonies visible to me. Yeah. Anyway, do you get translated into Spanish, your books mostly?
Yeah. Yes, I write in Catalan, but I translate myself my books in Spanish, and well, I have another books, and I only have one published book actually. I have short stories published, and some of them I write in Catalan, some of them I write in Spanish, and but it's difficult to explain to me because I think mostly in Catalan. So when I write in Spanish, I translate in Spanish, but it's a difficult thing to explain, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we have the impression that everyone in Catalonia is bilingual, but this will mean that everybody can understand if you speak to them in Spanish, though they will hate you. But they are not necessarily totally fluent in both languages. It's very difficult to be totally fluent in two different tongues. But I hail you for having two tongues to write on. That sounds biologically peculiar.
Yes, and in Spain we have a lot of languages, no? To speak about the literature in Spanish, to speak about Catalan, Castilian, Galician, Basque. Is the name in English Basque? And
yes, Basque. Yeah.
Basque and Benasquez, no? In Aragon too, and in Asturias. They have a
dialect
language too, and I don't.
They have Asturiano.
Asturiano.
Yes, I must stop speaking about this. This is public. No comment. But The Hobbit was translated into Asturian 2 years ago.
Wow.
They have many. They have many words for different kinds of crabs. Now, I must say no more because I have a temptation not to be discreet. Consequently, how do you feel that Spain, including Catalonia, features on the world stage or in the Mediterranean stage? Do you have a sense of connection with Italy because it is opposite to you and speaks a Romance language? Do you have a connection spiritually with France?
Yes, actually, thanks to Francesco Verso, we have a lot of translation. Not to Italian. We have this anthology. The name is Cuerpos. That directed Francesco Verso, and there is a lot of translation from Carme Torres, I think. Cristina Jurado, maybe
Yeah,
it's in this book. I don't remember. So
That one
French
behind
book.
you on the shelf.
Yes. He wrote the introduction.
Yes, yes,
yes.
Francesco. Your name probably means a person of France, or slightly.
No.
No, really?
No, it means that
That's something to do with
I am
Beijing.
Frank.
Frank. Okay. Yeah. Now, by this stage, Saran has shortened her long speech into a shorter speech. So I give to the world Saran on Turkey.
Okay, the floor is mine. You know, Turkey is a. Okay, you can hear me. Turkey is different than the other Mediterranean countries, which we have here, France, Italy, and Spain. I mean, because we are not European, actually, formally. So I think in Turkey, Turkish citizens have an identity crisis in between being Mediterranean, European, and also Middle Eastern. All three identities are quite different from each other. And I think that not belonging, feeling not to belong to any place in the world, might people, Turkish writers, underestimate their imagination power, and they despise themselves to produce science fiction, some alternative genre like that. But on the other hand, I think it's quite possible to develop new ideas and new possibilities about living, about features, to create new utopian features in Turkish. And during the foundation of Turkish Republic, people used to do that. People wrote so many very various and also interesting science fiction and scientific literature, we may define them. And during 70s, the science fiction magazines are quite popular in Turkey. I think in 1973, Orhan Duru invited the word bilim kurgu. Bilim means science and kurgu means fiction, bilim kurgu for science fiction. That time, people just realized that, okay, we are writing science fiction exactly. We can do that. We can publish our works. But, you know, big scale publishing houses didn't prefer publishing science fiction books because of the being afraid of they won't sell, they won't reach the big audiences, and they won't make money. So science fiction writers has not always, but usually been worried about their writings. But I think during 1990s and 2000s, science fiction writers feel encouraged, that they got encouraged by some boutique, small size publishing houses. And nowadays we have a foundation, Fabisat, Fantasy and Science Fiction Literature Association. And we start to give some awards for, you know, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and any other alternative genres. And also, I think the internet platforms was quite useful for us to publish for free, publish our stories for free. And I also wrote on many of my science fiction stories have been published in online platforms and also some anthologies, magazines. And I think we are getting stronger and we can feel ourselves better, more courage to produce science fiction anymore. Something starts to change, but the identity crisis I underlined in the beginning of my longer speech, not short, the speech that I have shortened already. On the other hand, it's also quite strange. The history of Turkish Republic is also can be read by the history of military corps. All these politics and political change, political climate reflected on our literature. That's why Turkish literature has always seen as socially realistic fiction, we can say. So science fiction is just the opposite side. That's why we just tend to produce science fiction, and we can confess it's science fiction. Okay, it's fantastic fiction, and it's also so valuable to read and write. Is it okay?
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful.
For length, I mean.
Excellent. Do local readers of science fiction, the sort of people who go to a movie and see Interstellar, for example, do they tend to favor translated works translated from the English United States science fiction, or do they show an equal willingness to read local Turkish authors?
They are not willing to read local Turkish authors. That's the defense mechanism of publishers in Turkey also. It's the challenge, I think, because exactly when I was invited to speak on FutureCon, I was quite surprised that I haven't read any science fiction. Maybe I read, but I don't remember. I just wasn't aware of South Korean science fiction, Japan science fiction. We were influenced by UK and US literature. Maybe some Soviet Russian science fiction also translated in Turkish, and we are also interested in Russian science fiction. But except that not three, English and Russian, Turkish science fiction readers are seen like not interested enough in any other language. And also for local writers, it's the situation is the same.
Yeah. How much translated from the English science fiction is there in a bookshop? Would you say one shelf, two shelves?
No, almost none. So less.
Yeah, so it's just the names then.
And it's also strange that some other, let's say, prestigious writers like Nazlı Eray, İhsan Oktay Anar, they are quite popular. And their works have been translated into English and any other language, as far as I know. But they are not defined as science fiction writers, in fact. For example, Puslu Kıtalar Atlası, I think its translation is The Atlas of Misty Continents. Yes, the exact translation of Puslu Kıtalar Atlası. That novel is deriving from Ottoman history. I can define it as a fantastic novel, in fact, but it's because of being alternate history, and alternate history can be accepted the subgenre of science fiction. We can count İhsan Oktay Anar as not science fiction writer, but that book is science fiction. But real writers, not real writers, I mean, the writers who can be defined exactly as science fiction writers are not well known in international areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yet. I think it must be changed.
Okay, we have an exciting moment. We have a question from the audience. Now, this is from Renan Bernardo, of Brazil, whose name I recognized somehow. So I don't know whether he's an authentic, random member of the audience or whether he's being kind to us. How important are magazines in the various countries in encouraging science fiction and fantasy? What about in Turkey? Is there a Turkish science fiction magazine?
For years, yes. During 70s, 80s, 90s, there were Atılgan, which means enterprise, the Star Trek ship, Atılgan, Antares, but the last one was published during 20s, but then internet platforms just has taken the place of all magazines, not only science fiction magazines actually. That's why now we have so many internet platforms, internet websites, like yerli bilim kurgu yükseliyor means local science fiction is increasing. And they also make some competitions. And there is some other associations which products scientific knowledge. They also make some other science fiction competitions. And Bilim Kurgu Kulübü published a collective storybook named Yeryüzü Müzesi. Yeryüzü Müzesi, how can we translate it? I just...
If you want to write names
I can write them, and also I can publish a list of them in Discord later on.
Yes, that would be
it could be quite useful.
Yeah. Can I move on and correct what I said before? Because Renan Bernardo was actually relaying the question from Macquarie. So I don't want to cast doubt upon the existence of...
it's Sally McCorry. You remember Sally McCorry?
Not me, no. Where is the list of the number of
you read the book.
Did I?
She's the translator of Bloodbusters and
oh, right. Oh, that is her. Oh, she's a very good translator. Yes. Congratulations to her. I thought it was very, very good. Where is the number on here of people people in the audience? It says participantes 7, but that is not the full size of everyone participating.
Okay, let's move on, Ian.
Yeah. Can I ask Maria Antònia, what about Catalonia as regards magazines? Are there any specialized science fiction magazines in Catalan?
The mic, Maria.
Now, we have, I can say a lot of magazines, but with a very short life. So I think it's a problem in a lot of countries, maybe. We have new magazines every year, but they have to close. Maybe the span life have 1 year, 2 years, but it's very short life. In Catalan, there is a magazine. The name is Catarsi. It's made for the association, the Catalan Association of Science Fiction, and maybe I make a mistake now, but I think the name is Catarsi, and yes, it's this. And in Spain there is it's the same. There are a lot of magazines, but with maybe 1 year, 2 years, but they close.
There is not a tradition, a long tradition. Olivier, in France, Galaxy has a long tradition, but it seems to have very long spaces in between different editions of the magazine. Would you rank Galaxy as among the top French science fiction magazines?
I was published, my first short stories was published in Galaxy, but there was many galaxies in some kind of spaces of speaking, but Galaxy is one of the most long magazine, and the other is Bifrost. There's two most prominent magazine. Galaxies is mostly specialized in publishing stories from Africa, from other countries than Anglo-Saxon or French. They are working about it. And Bifrost is more, the spirit is more to literature as with a capital L. So it's more like that, but and work about writers and so like that. But the Galaxy is most about publishing short stories from many writers, from young writers, from new writers. So it's a difference between the two magazines.
And particularly with a particular accent upon African science fiction.
Yes.
Interesting, because we are beginning to see an upswell of interest in the Anglo-Saxon world in SF writers from Africa, Nigeria, and so forth. And the same thing is happening in France. Is that because of ex-colonial families who have moved to France? No, it is because of actual writers from the former colonies.
There's curiosity because mostly in France and in mainstream literature, we are translating books from many countries. I heard sometimes that United States of America translated 3% of books translated, and in France there's many translations from many countries. We are translating from Turkey, for many countries, but in mainstream literature. I don't speak in science fiction literature. But in my editor, my publisher, La Talente, published Javier Negrete, from Spain, and there was publication of Cuban author Yos. So there's a tradition to publish writer from other countries than Anglo-Saxon. What I said as a joke, that anti-imperialism, it's not like that. It's real curiosity about many countries, but about literature from many countries. So we try to translate Japan novel, and it's very difficult to translate Japan writer, not because of the language, but because of agents, and agents are a problem.
Yes.
So it's true. But where we have only writers, and we have people who can read Spanish, we can read writer from many countries. We have resources to scout, because scouting novel from many countries is a key. Because it's a difference, because we have to looking for novel from other countries than Anglo-Saxon.
Then we have to talk, Olivier, maybe later.
Yeah. Okay, Francesco wants to say a word about Italy and how Italy,
yeah.
science fiction, spearheaded by Francesco, will take over the world.
No, please.
Yes, yes. You are the Marco Polo of European science fiction. You have traveled there and brought back noodles and Chinese science fiction, and you're also a jolly good writer. You are really excellent.
Thank you. From you, I really feel
we have a mutual
honored hug. Good, thank you.
Yeah. Now, how many other Italian writers are there to whom we should be paying attention?
Yes. Okay. Well, many questions, so I'll try to cover some of them. So first of all, the magazines. Let's say that in Italy we have a strange distribution for the most important book series, which is called Urania, which in the 60s and 70s, as a a weekly circulation of 40,000 copies, but then now it's reduced to 4,000, maybe 5 or 6,000 copies a month. That's weird because this magazine, which is actually a book, is being distributed in all of the newspaper stands of Italy, which were like 33,000. So when you manage to get your book out on these newspapers, so it's really more like a magazine, you have a really wide circulation of copies. Having said that, we have also another important magazine, which is called Robot, which has been publishing, up and down with different editions, maybe for more than 30 years, something like that, even more. So these are, let's say, the two most important publications. There are, of course, other magazines, but not so relevant. We have If, Insolido and Fantastico. We have some other magazines which had maybe 5 years, 10 years life, and then they kind of drop out. Regarding let's say the science fiction scene, as in other countries, we've been influenced by the Anglo-Saxon culture. So the dominance of this literature is really widespread. If you go into a bookstore, you will find the usual suspects, the, the usual names that we all know about. And this is probably also one of the reasons why I started this future fiction project, because I was always looking at these books and they all kind of echoed each other and resemble the same kind of storytelling told by the same kind of person. So I said, what happened to the rest of the world? So I went looking for the rest of the world and I found a treasure. I found that just outside of Italy, France, Spain, or Greece, their science fiction is produced with high quality everywhere in the world. It's just that we don't know anything about that, as all the other panelists said. We're just overshadowed by the longa mano of the American and the English industry, which is of course strong, powerful, and also play a role also on the cost of the translation. But let me tell you this, it's not impossible to translate from French. It's not impossible to translate from Spanish. The cost of the translation between English and Spanish is not so big. So it's just a matter of cultural laziness or kind of, I think it's the responsibility of the publisher, because they're putting the burden of the translation on the authors, which should be the responsibility of the publisher itself. If I find a story that is valuable, it's my responsibility to translate it into another language, whether it's English or French or Spanish. I'm not talking about Urdu. I'm not talking about, Bangla. I'm talking about Russian. I'm talking about, maybe Chinese could be considered still an expensive, and it is still an expensive language, but I am nobody and I've managed to do it. So, with a little bit of passion and enthusiasm and organization, I think really a lot of people can do that. At least small presses. I'm not saying the big industry, because as Olivier Paquet said, when you put the agents and the son of the agent and the wife of the agent in the picture, it all becomes very complicated. But if you can create a network of small presses, it could be done. So I slightly went away from the original, but I wanted to say this because this is important. The thing that we don't know each other, it's really relevant, and I'm really happy to connect all these dots, because the Greek science fiction is really cool at the moment. They have very good writers. The Spanish science fiction, I translated Cuerpos, also thanks to Raul Chanella. I mean, there is no gap in the quality. And let me tell you this, the best author from France, the best author from Greece, the best author from Poland, the best author from many countries is absolutely comparable with one of the many authors we get translated from English. We get all the list of the agents to be translated, because it's a kind of trade off, oh, you want Bob Silverberg? Okay, I give you, another thing, or this is how it works. I've seen this in many book fairs. This is how the science fiction authors in general, all authors are traded. I give you a big one, okay, but put also, his best friend or his cousin. It's stuff like that. I don't want to underestimate the work of anybody. I'm just saying that we have been underestimating the work of very, very big authors all over the world. Because when I went to China, I said that to the Chinese friends, look, Liu Cixin won the award. The book is amazing, but have you ever realized that maybe if China wasn't a 1.5 billion people, so powerful, maybe he would not have this kind of success and translated in all these countries? Because it's also the relevance of the country that shifts the position of the local science fiction to be translated more or less. As Seran said, they had a very strong connection in Turkey with Russia. So of course, Russia at that time, maybe I'm talking about, the 70s and 80s, the Strugatsky brothers, they had a real influence, but it was the culture, it was the power of Russia, the Soviet Union, let's say. So it's the same, but now we have to change this. We have to decolonize science fiction. We have to create connection between non-English to non-English countries, because in the 60s and in the 70s, and Ian, you know better than anybody, there were many translations from Polish to French, from German to Spanish. I mean, it was a little bit more common. I'm not saying that we have to change the world, but at least put some of the best authors on some list and translate also from other languages. Sorry, I'm getting passionate about this as well.
People with passion are the important people, because they're the people who do something. Don Wallheim, Door Books, the United States, was one of the people who had translated well and published a lot of Strugatsky's and a lot of other foreign SF. And that was because he was a socialist, though a capitalist at the same time, if you see what I mean. I mean, he would happily publish John Norman's Bondage of Gore books, but he was also really opening the way for Soviet science fiction, just for example. And another person I think of as being a person of passion was Giuseppe Lippi, who I think he was the editor of
Urania.
Urania.
Yes, Urania.
Urania, yes. My brain is decaying. I mean, you mentioned this only a short while ago, and he sadly died about a year ago. Did he not?
Yes.
Does it still have the same passion guiding it? Would you think, Urania?
Well, I hope so. I mean, now we see a rise in the interest by readers. We see the more books. The new editor Francoforte is doing a good job to promote Italian science fiction among Italians, because we suffer from the esterophilia. So we, even in the 60s and 70s, had to change our name. So I would be called Frank Two Words, because Italian readers would not accept the fact that I was writing science fiction, and they prefer an Americanized name. So we suffer from this sense of inferiority, which is a complete nonsense, because it's often the other way around, that American people come to Italy to get inspiration and find their setting, like Dan Brown and all this other stuff. So it's really a matter of believing in, and with determination, having a long-term project. So Urania, of course, is there since 60 years. It's our flagship, but they're doing, of course, a good job. Mondadori is a big publisher, so they go mostly for the commercial thing, and are more interested in the balance of the budget than, you know, promoting stuff very strange or very say to with a low probability of selling a lot, you know. I can maybe continue later as we go to conversation, and leave the word to other panelists.
Yeah, I'll just
Olivier.
Maria Antònia. Yeah, did you know that that Gigamesh, which is in Barcelona, run by Alejo Cuervo, publisher of Game of Thrones, became big suddenly overnight because of Game of Thrones. And from one year it was a small business. The next year it was on the same level as the national airline. Consequently, this gave power to Alejo Cuervo, which he used wisely. So he told the major book outlet, El Corte Inglés, the department store chain, which is everywhere, that of course he would supply them with the latest Game of Thrones, provide as many copies as they wanted. And they knew that they wanted hundreds and hundreds because Christmas time was coming. He would supply them with these, provided that they took one book by the other writers on his list. So comes the day when El Corte Inglés send their order in, and surprise, surprise, they only ordered hundreds and hundreds of copies of Game of Thrones. So, as Christmas approaches, Alejo calls them and says, "I'm sorry you've decided to ignore our terms of sales. Goodbye." This caused extreme fear and panic among the buyers at El Corte Inglés, who indeed got no copies of the bestseller to put into all their shops around Spain. And they behave better now. And that's an example of a person of passion using his power wisely. That's 3 P's, person, passion, power. So it must be true. Yeah, Maria, do you have any comments about the Spanish language publishers, such as Gigamesh, who are in Barcelona also?
Another publishers?
Yeah. The Spanish language publishers.
Yes. It's difficult to say. Here there are a lot of little publishers, and they have a very good intentions, but maybe they don't do the right things always. I don't know if I explain, but I think I don't know.
Okay, don't worry. I'm just asking questions. Maybe I should look.
I think.
Hey,
wait, I think Olivier. Olivier wanted to comment something.
Yes, about Francesco changing names, because it's right in ancient times to sell science fiction books, you had to have Anglo-Saxon names on the books. But nowadays, there's a change because translating is expensive, and many Anglo-Saxon American writers don't sell well. It's not the easy way to make profits with Anglo-Saxon name. So it's why local writers have a place to be published, because it's cheap to publish a local writer. There's no translation cost, so it's easy to publish as a local writer. You will not be rich because literature, the book sales are dropping. So we will not be rich, but you will publish. So it's a change between now and those days.
I want to add that, of course, now the situation is different. Okay, we're talking about extreme cases, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of important names. I think one of them all is Clelia Faris. She's an excellent writer from Sardinia, one of the most beautiful Italian islands, and she's been translated in English. So her book, an anthology, will be out thanks to the translation of Rachel Cordasco for Rosarium Publishing next month, I think, or something like that. And then I have a bunch of books out in English and hopefully in Chinese. I probably will be the first or maybe the only Italian science fiction to have been published in China. But there are a bunch of other really interesting guys that are exploring cyberpunk and post-cyberpunk, like Giovanni De Matteo, for example, or Dario Tonani, which has a planetary saga, kind of steampunk space opera. So these are some of the names. And then I can, of course, expand this list on the Discord server.
There's another question from the audience, from Anouk Arnal, French, who is asking, who are the science fiction fathers and mothers of your respective countries, and the new names, the emerging authors? First of all, do you have science fiction fathers that you would refer to? I mean, the UK could mention H.G. Wells, for example. The French could mention completely inaccurately Jules Verne, because he was not a science fiction writer, but they can say Jules Verne. Yes. Yeah, Rosniene. What about in Catalonia?
Yes, actually, one of the bestsellers in Catalan it's a science fiction book. It's the name is I don't see. It's Typescript of the Second Origin, no, the Manuel de Pedrolo. I think you know who translated to Castilian. And we have a very we have science fiction from the 19th too, from the end of the 19th century. We have Voyage to the Moon. We have time travels in the beginning of the sorry of the in the end of the 19th century. So we have a very long tradition in Catalan science fiction, I think. And in Castilian, in Spanish, there is a lot also the classics, the Chronotope, no? It's from 1889, I think. I don't know. So we have a very...
Before The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, I think it's 1 year previous. So it will be about 1894, I think.
Yeah.
It precedes by 1 year, I think. We at the Barcelona Eurocon 2016, we produced 3-language edition of manuscript to give to everybody free, and we hope that it had some effect, because here it was in English for the first time ever, and subsequently it has appeared English on its own from an American university press, which is jolly good.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have it. Yes, I have the book. Yes, thank you for the translation.
Yeah. Okay. Saran, you look very comfortable there. Let me make you uncomfortable. Do you have a founding father or founding mother of Turkish science fiction?
For Turkish science fiction, not science fiction in general.
Okay, both. Answer both.
Both.
Questions.
Okay. I mentioned you Orhan Duru. Orhan Duru is quite strange, I think. It's not father of science fiction, of Turkish science fiction. I don't mind the fathers, mothers, and the founders exactly, but Orhan Duru, I found Orhan Duru quite interesting because he uses science fiction as a tool to define his troubles, to define his mother's opinions about social life, about politics. I think I prefer reading not hard science fiction, social science fiction. That's why I also wrote a book about Ursula Le Guin's literary works and her biography in Turkish. Let's say Le Guin is my science fiction mother. And in Turkey, people prefer reading dystopias. I found it strange because we live in a country like dystopia, but dystopias are quite still popular. People always compare and contrast between Aldous Huxley's and George Orwell's works, and people see Asimov as science fiction's father, exactly. I think, and on the other hand, I can tell the name of Turkish science fiction, very prestigious, and I found them really valuable for our local science fiction. Zühtü Bayar. I will write down all those names for sure. Aşkın Güngör, which is younger than Zühtü Bayar or Müfit Özdeş. All those writers almost sacrifice their lives for Turkish science fiction's improvement and development. We respect them so much. I want to add some very little thing, except this, your question, Ian. I mentioned nowadays Turkish science fiction is getting popular. People find this genre prestigious. They begin to respect Turkish science fiction writers. And Afşin Kum, the writer's name, Afşin Kum's Sıcak Kafa, Hot Head, is nowadays a Netflix serial project. It's very a big development for Turkish science fiction, exactly. And the plot of that novel is a virus, an insanity virus, which is spreading by speaking. It's quite interesting. I don't know if it would be translated in English, but I hope it will be.
Okay.
Sorry.
I can add a couple of names for Italy. Maybe our founding fathers. You might know them. Maybe one you don't know, but one for sure. The first one I'll mention is, of course, Italo Calvino. Even though it doesn't really write proper science fiction, but it's more fantastical. But anyways, one kind of inspiration for all the fantasies of Italian writers. The other one is a very famous writer in literature, but not very known in science fiction, which is Primo Levi, which is very famous for his "If This Is a Man," Se Questo è un Uomo, from the memories from his war from being deported to the concentration camp in Germany. But he wrote extraordinary science fiction in the form of the short stories. Maybe 20 years before Philip K. Dick, he wrote social science fiction. He was a mathematician. He wrote beautiful science fiction stories. So these are our relevant fathers.
Is he published in English? The short stories, I mean, Primo Levi.
I don't know. There might be some, big book where there is everything translated. So it might be, yes, might be one of these giant, collections.
Yes, I mean, he's completely well known on bookshelves because of This Be a Man and other books. But it is new to me his a priority in science fiction. I always like priority from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another part of the question that came from Anouk refers to the question that I actually put on this bit of paper. In the long history of these illustrious Mediterranean countries, namely France, Italy, Spain, or Catalonia, and Turkey, is the long history an advantage or a disadvantage when it comes to visualizing the future?
If I could say, for France, it's special because we had Jules Verne, we have speculative fiction, so it would be easy to create science fiction in France. But we had First World War, Second World War, and we lose our belief in progress. Mostly, we lose our empire, so we lose the vision of future. So France is stuck with, I could say, stuck in the present or in the past. Stuck in the present because we are thinking that only present is interesting in literature. So there's, especially in mainstream literature about the reality, about social crisis, about this. Or stuck in the past. It's strange to say that one successful genre in science fiction in France is steampunk, because steampunk is in some way the France when she was great, when we believe in progress. So it's a success. And also among the writers of science fiction, among the French writers of science fiction, they're mostly dystopia, but it's mostly about warning against technology. The defiance against technology, against technology is against life. It's some kind. So we have science fiction with dealing with this, about warning, about social warning. So it's difficult for us French science fiction writer to write about how we can deal with technology and create future. It's difficult. So, but and it's why one of the most best-selling writer among the French new science fiction writer is Alain Damasio with The 30th. He sold, if I remember, 100,000 copies, which is huge, very huge for science fiction. But it's about revolution, and it's also again some kind against technology. So it's mixed. It's a success, but it's also against the vision of coexistence between us humans and technology.
That's very interesting. Yes. So yeah, France we tend to think of as a kind of revolutionary force moving towards the future, l'immortalité et l'éternelle jeunesse, and so forth. But actually, it's more like Michel Houellebecq's picture of sad farmers sitting around shooting themselves. And
yes,
well, but the possibility of an island is so wonderful, really. Sorry, Saran, please.
May I give an example? I just forgot one of the fathers of science fiction and fantastic fiction writers who inspires me so much, Terry Pratchett. When I was thinking the answer of your question, is it an advantage or disadvantage to have a long history as all these Mediterranean countries? I think it's an advantage, and it's quite like Terry Pratchett's In This World. I mean, making all our ordinary world upside down. We can produce very interesting future scenarios. I think we can get benefits from our so complicated, let's say, problematic, troubled examples about history, historical and political events. I'm talking about Turkey right now, not all other Mediterranean countries. That's why I think it can be quite as an advantage to write for future.
Yeah, okay, I have to ask, because of Imperial Rome and Romulus and Remus, I must ask Francesco about the illustrious history of Italy and the Roman Empire, which stretched across the world.
Yeah.
Do you feel inspired when, I mean, look at your epics, look at the Aeneid, this Romans, this is your duty to suppress the haughty and to raise up and comfort those who were oppressed.
Well, in a way, this empire, the material empire and the spiritual empire represented by the church, of course, had an influence, but not on the last, let's say, century, at least for the science fiction writers. Of course, there are books that deal with that kind of uchronia, going back in time or reviving the Roman Empire. There's somebody that wrote a saga and where the Roman Empire never really ended and they conquered the universe. So there is also a thriller where there is a kind of inquisitor going back in time and solving crime mysteries. It's Valerio Evangelista, very, very, I think it's been translated also in French. So yeah. So there is this take on our long history, but let me say that the gap we had with the other countries, due to kind of technology, we'd not always been, even though our industries could be, regarded as some of the top class and top of the but normally when it comes to writing, we tend to, look at the realism, the famous neorealismo italiano, but we tend to stick to our human side, to stick to the spiritual side of things. So, but lately it's not like that. So lately there's new generation of writers that have access to internet, speak English, that read often directly in English language. So the situation is much better. There is absolutely no gap, and the Italian short stories or Italian novels could absolutely be translated in any other language. Of course, we don't have a big production. That's the case because we are not. We don't have a population like China or the US or India, but quality happens everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Announcement that we have 15 minutes left. So if anybody wishes to advertise themselves, here is your golden opportunity. I do not. What about Olivier? Do you wish to advertise?
It's difficult, but I will advertise by saying that I'm feeling as a real European science fiction writer, because in many of my novels, they are set in the future, but in Europe. And if I could show something, I have this. Yes, it's called Jardin d'hiver.
Okay. I will show one.
It's about a story in the future. It's a struggle between ecologists, radicals, and engineers. And the ecologists are metamorphing plant into weapon, and engineers are creating weapon are creating robots as animals. And so like that, but we are, it's a trip in Europe from Poland to Iceland and even Italy, and so like that. I really wanted to say, to show Europe with a future. So it's why I want to advertise this.
Everybody buy that book. Okay, Saran, advertise yourself.
I have nothing in English. In my sci-fi novel, Hayat Üretim Merkezi, which means Life Production Center, which was published in 2015, there is a cyberspace called Production Center. People can realize anything with their imagination power, but they have different levels of capacity and competency. That's why they need to develop a new kind of political and economical system, which based on exchange mechanism. People exchange their ideas, abilities, and products. And also, one of my stories, which was published in an anthology in Karanlıktaki Kadınlar, Women in Darkness, we published very different gothic and horror stories. Actually, all other writers wrote horror stories or fantastic stories. I prefer to write a science fiction story, which is based on biology, actually. The name of my story is Gebe, the pregnant. Woman, I don't want to give you spoilers, even it's not in English yet, but it's about a clone story, and also it's about the conflict between androids and human cyborgs. Yeah, I know. That's why I just don't want
spoil it.
Mention so much. Yes.
It. Yeah. Maria Antònia, advertise yourself. This is your opportunity. Many people would pay thousands of euros to have a free advertising slot.
Solar punk.
Oh,
Yes.
solar punk.
I can't
Solar
see it.
punk. No?
It's
Yeah,
solar
I can't
punk.
see it on my
Solar
screen.
punk.
Ah, yes, there we are. Okay.
It's an anthology, and I have a short story here. The name is Diston Betularia, and it's about the Donna Haraway universe. And I don't remember much about the history because I don't like to read my own stories. And it's the books I have here. Cuerpos.
Yes.
So I'm mostly her publisher, let's say.
Yes.
Okay, we'll switch over.
Francisco knows everything about us.
Over to your publisher, Francesco.
Yeah, I've published them all. So
to advertise.
Yeah, well, let's say I can do that. I can finish this off. But
okay, go on.
No, well, let's say that yes, because I do scout for all these stories. I found interesting authors all over the world. So we managed to sell Maria Antònia stories in China, and that's good. It creates a very, very good connection, and to discover these talented people, and they're new generation, and so I think the future is there. And so let's say that, for example, I edited a Chinese science fiction anthology where there are a lot of names from Europe and the world, and I've edited this with Rosarium Publishing in the US. This is it's called Future Fiction, and this is to say a bit that this is more about short stories. So we can start from short stories to showcase the quality of these of their writing of other people. So it's not so complicated to translate a bunch of short stories into another language. Of course, we need the support of this and that, and maybe sometimes an institution or a publisher or a small press, or you throw in other elements and you get the job done. That's the most important thing. So and when it comes to advertising my own books, Ian, this is the book that Sally McCory translated. It's called Bloodbusters. Well, you don't really see it much. It's, yeah. And then you have Next Human, which is more like a post-cyberpunk story with mind uploading and a lot of problems related to the pollution and the environment, but just basically a kind of weird, bizarre love story. Let's say that. Let's say that the the other things I'm working at the moment is the big book called The Walkers. It's a first solar punk Italian book. It's been published in Italian, and now Sally McCory again translated it into English. It's a really big thing. It took me around 8 years to write it. It's two novels, and it's about nanotechnology and 3D printing and ubiquitous computing. So imagine a Rome where people stop eating, and instead of going to the restaurant, they go to perfumery to smell uh, many different kind of fragrances. So this nanotechnology allows people to eat much less and to convert raw materials like grasses, leaves, roots, and fruits directly into vitamins and carbohydrates and all the things that we need, but in a precise quantity. So we don't need to eat that much. And also because most of the food that we eat is really, really bad. It's really industrial junk food. So sometimes it's much, much better to eat less and eat better. So I just erase, or not erase, but let's say that eating becomes like an habit, like going to swim, once a month, once every 2 months. We don't need to do it that much. But to compensate the lack of restaurants, because it would be a disaster in Rome, I created the perfumeries where people have the same kind of sociality they share, like they do in Turkey. You kind of smoke, a very social habit, but there is all these fragrances called the smart fumes, like smart perfume. But then the thing is that this group of people, they're kind of fed up with the gig economy, with kind of lousy kind of life, housing, healthcare, all these things. So they decided the city is not the place where they should be living, and they abandon Rome. They go away and they start to populate places that were abandoned centuries ago. So they called the walkers. They're kind of neo-nomadism, and thanks to 3D printing, they can share open source formulas, and they can 3D print a tent or a chair or a bed in a matter of hours. And so they every night they sleep in another place, or they have kind of tour between different places, kind of pilgrimage, like going to Santiago de Compostela every year for fun, So this is a very strange book, but I hope that people will like it. So it's kind of solar punk because it addresses some of the sustainability and inclusivity and kind of anti-capitalistic point of view.
Obviously, you have an upgraded mind. Now, I've been admiring your special headphones, and I present to you a Cyberman, which is wearing exactly your headphones, and from Doctor Who. Just mentioning.
Nice.
You can have a publicity photo with the Cyberman if you like. Now, frivolity aside, we are coming into the last moments.
But can I say a couple of, just one thing, just with the couple of minutes? I just want to say that I'm working with Seran Demiral on a Turkish science fiction anthology, and I'm working with Natalia Theodoridou for a Greek science fiction anthology, and I will do African science fiction anthology next year. And so we really want to unite and connect all the traditions of Europe and the world. So there is much richness outside there. So.
And I want to add, I want to add a little thing. I really care Francesco's sentence that stories are the beginning, better to begin, because we can spread our ideas like viruses instead of very big, you know, like my speech novel. Short stories are better. That's why thank you, Francesco, by the way.
Oh, a pleasure.
Any last words from anyone? Okay,
Maria.
anything I say would only be frivolous and of little importance. So I will thank the audience whose size I have no idea of, and the speakers who are up the top, and I hope you can remember their names and the pronunciation of their names. And especially thank Francesco, who is going crazy for a cigarette after. And thank you, and onward to the next event. And bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Okay, thank you guys. Maybe we're still on live.